in this present moment, there's a lot of suffering in the world, and it's extremely devastating. I find, and I can get into despair if I want to work with a more specific social issue, but I'm not sure which one. There's a lot of problems, and where's my part in that? And I think part of finding my voice is also having compassion for the voices that say, no, you're not doing good enough, or you're not making enough difference, or who are you? There needs to be time for someone to find their way in this path, in a creative arts path.
Imaginaction podcast.
Creando comunità trasformative.
Social arts across borders. Welcome to Imaginaction podcast. In this episode, I'm speaking with Charlie Kesem about stories, community, and the social arts facilitator path. Enjoy. What would you say you are? I guess you're a storyteller, an artist, facilitator. Would you call yourself a facilitator and social arts facilitator? Do you feel it's something that you can find yourself in that as well, your work?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I kind of play with the title sometimes when I discovered storytelling and started telling stories, and I kind of started calling myself a storyteller because it became a really useful umbrella for someone who facilitates and does community work and sometimes performs, and it became a useful umbrella. But yeah, these days I suppose I usually use storyteller first, and then facilitator, educator, community builder, perhaps. I like that you said facilitator for social arts. I was like, oh, that kind of is what I do. I suppose I usually plop the word community in there somewhere, because it sometimes it feels kind of like a driving force for me as well. No, it's somewhat elusive, that word.
When we met, I think we were still starting with Kesem, which is magic in Hebrew, and the Kesem storytelling. And I think that the name before or still it's Charlie and Charlie Kesem. And I find it fascinating. And also I remember that you were, doing Aliyah, going to Israel at that time, and
emigrating. Maybe, for those who don't know what Aliyah is.
Yes, like what is Aliyah? That's a good question.
Oh, that's a whole can of worms.
What has been your way in, your doorway to this line of work, whatever it is called?
Oh, I like this question. Because actually the minute you said doorway, this kind of, it's like portal in my imagination opens up. And I suppose that's definitely a big part of the way in. Actually, some years ago when I was in my 20s, when I was trying to find my way and what to call myself, my work, I actually did choose the name Magic Door and even drew a logo. And I think it was a bit too like, ooh, perhaps not grounded enough, but I love the image of when we tell a story or have a communal experience. It's kind of going through a doorway and going through a portal, and how we can use words to open doors in our imagination or in human connection. Even now we're just talking about these empathy dinners where a friend of ours, Melissa Apixis, is doing empathy dinners with a Republican and a Democrat, and it's opening a doorway to meet each other. But the question was about what was the question again? How did you get to do this work? Like what was your way in, or entrance or doorway or key? I suppose in a really broad sense, I feel like the arts have always been my like blood, in my blood, and in my life force. And after years of, realizing that I'm not an academic, despite what, teachers or family might want, pursuing that more, finding my way to, I studied arts therapy, which was a huge personal healing process, but also in conjunction with that, I started to meet like-minded, innovative communities. And I felt like actually that was a big part of my training ground as well. I was learning from my friends and my peers about facilitation, about inclusivity, about how to work with social issues, or religious, spiritual holidays, but in such creative and magical ways. That was definitely, for a long period, my doorway. And then eventually I found storytelling, which was like the next grand doorway. And I really feel like I must credit the School of Storytelling in Forest Row, where I studied, and wonderful teachers, Roy Gallo, and many teachers who just, they open the doors for many people all over the world. And the stories themselves, I feel, are the doorways, actually. And as I go through each year now, telling stories, sometimes more, sometimes less, I sometimes find there's stories that accompany me in a certain time of year or time of life, and it's literally that I feel like they kind of like knock on my door and say hello. So like the stories are the doorways, and every kind of step along the journey, and the people that inspire me along the way, I think they are the doorways too. They have been, and they are.
Actually, this leads us to the second question, which is both about what has been leading you, but also, a little bit about the guides and who has been the inner guides and the outer guides that you found.
Oh, I love this question too. I'll tell you why, because over this year specifically, in light of the pandemic, I've been asking myself, what's my role during these times, or what's needed, and and being someone that works with groups and people, and not really being able to do that. Okay, now what? So in the summer, I was doing research around the topic storytelling as medicine. And part of that research was exactly that. Who are my allies? What are my allies in the imaginal world? Also shadows and demons and characters, like to create this kind of toolbox, or a friend of mine said, it's not a medicine bag, it's a warehouse. I need more space of characters and images to call upon for creating stories, or for each one that brings a remedy. And I can say ones that just kind of pop up, because I feel like I'm still kind of on that quest. Okay, I'm not sure what's popping up, but what is popping up is something that's not actually in the imagination. It's outside in my garden. It's been one of my lockdown projects, learning gardening, and the trials and tribulations. I just planted, how do you call stilim in English? Like
like it's not seedlings or plants.
Seedlings. Seedlings. Just planted seedlings yesterday, and then the first really heavy rains came and almost buried them all. Like it's a wonderful image. And then this morning, kind of trying to pry them out and tuck them back into bed, and ask them if they're okay. And I think, for me, cultivating a relationship with the natural world is something that I just know in my bones is a healer, is support, is medicine. And I know that, yeah, because I know I can easily forget to listen to those things. And actually one of my guides in the form of a real person, Mika Hadar Borthwick is her name, who I actually met around the time I was discovering all these wonderful communities, the Mud and Grassroots Jews in Moshe House. I was studying art therapy with her daughter, and she, Ruti, her mother Mika, is a healer, and something that one of her many facets, she has many gifts. She works with flowers, so she's been doing a project called A Flower a Day, photographing a flower a day. And then I noticed this year she started posting the flowers again, but saying, look at the picture, take 10 mindful breaths, and sense what do you sense, what do you experience. And of course you can do this with real flowers or plants or trees or crystals or all kinds of things. Yeah, kind of surprising me that actually I'm focusing on mostly things in the natural world. I think dreams, there's certain characters or places that have been appearing in my dreams. My old garden where I grew up has been appearing in my dreams lately. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. What does that have to say?
Yeah, no, it's great. Like I really believe in that, and I have experienced that.
I would like to add that I feel like that's just what came out when you asked the question, but I will say that it's not like I'm one of these people that's, preparing my own medicine and always meditating, and that's just what came out when the question was popped. But I definitely very much feel like a student of connecting with nature, or still very relatively pretty young in the storytelling world, for example. Actually, Roy, my teacher, said it's one of the professions that you kind of get more credible with age. It's funny. Yeah, and I think I felt it's important to say that because also, if I'm working, I told you just before about this project that I'm doing that's connecting with the different seasons and life cycles, the 8 kind of, I call them transitions of the year, which have different names and different traditions. And, a lot of people gather and meditate and do ceremonies and things like that. And I feel like my way, or what I like to bring, the space I like to hold and open for community, is very much grounded in story, in song, in ritual, but not kind of the highest realms, the simplest ritual of, bringing a piece of fruit to the communal table, or a photograph of a loved one that's passed away and sharing an anecdote about it. Just the simple, grounded rituals that connect us kind of here and now, rather than that. I feel like that feels like a big part of my way. Also because I'm a bit scared of all the spiritual stuff.
No, but I love it. It's like this, the magic of everyday life, and yeah.
So, it's nice that you say that, actually, because I can't remember whether I've got it on my website anymore, but it says Kesem Collective. I think it says, it either used to say, or it still says, weaving life and art, because that was my intention, that my art becomes my life and my life becomes my art. And
the next question is about what has and is maybe still, because we're on the path, and been the frustration or challenges with this kind of work.
I mean, there's a couple of things that pop up. I just want to say them out loud, so remember. One is about finding the way to this work, and one is about the boring practical stuff like marketing or knowing your audience or how to brand, like more businessy stuff that I'm perhaps been more resistant to, but learning more and more how to do that, and having funny days where I'm doing marketing, which basically means having personal conversations with loads and loads of people, which when I zoom out, I feel like, oh, marketing, but zooming in, it's like, oh, it's quite nice. It's just like to try and make it personal as possible, especially like I can't remember when I said, but feeling like we're so saturated with stuff. Have this experience, have this workshop, have this thing. I'm like, why would anyone want a storytelling course now? And a lot of people usually tell me, well, that's exactly what people want right now. But yeah, I feel very overwhelmed by how much there is out there. And also, I'm quite picky about what I resonate with and what I don't. So actually, it's kind of a challenge, but also a gift, finding the right teachers or right guides. And I prefer, like, I feel with storytelling, Rory is my main teacher, and in some ways I don't feel a massive need to go to workshops and things with loads of other storytellers, which I'm sure I will in time, but and I have connected with other storytellers along the way, but it's really golden when I really feel a connection with someone and can develop there. So that's some of that. And I think what cropped up for me is, yeah, it's about finding my way to this point, because I went to an all-girls school that was very focused on academics. I wanted to study drama at university, but was encouraged to take a more academic course rather than a highly practical one. And I was like bored, didn't really want to do the theory so much. I wanted to create. It didn't suit me. And I feel like, yeah, over my 20s, I was started to learn to facilitate, terribly at first, and grew in that. And but still, when people ask what do you do, I didn't even know what to say. Oh, I'm a creative arts facilitator. And I also didn't have a lot of confidence because in a way it's kind of carving out your own individual journey, I feel, for all of us in this field. Because it's got these different nuances. Maybe some people focus more on activism work, or some people more performance, or in applied social arts in many different settings. And yeah, I think it just took me a lot of trial and error, or trial and doing something else, and trial to get to this point where I suddenly realized, oh, that year where I studied photography was actually really helpful. I'm not a photographer, but now I know a bit about Photoshop and graphic design a little bit. Super helpful right now. Art therapy, I didn't become an art therapist, but unbelievable foundation for working with people and arts and creativity and empathy. So actually, my partner's family, I was talking with them about this recently, how, yeah, I suppose because of what I went through, I feel like it's okay for young people in their 20s to get a bit lost and not know and try. I feel like that's the time. But it was challenging. Fortunately, I was privileged enough to have choice to find that way.
Yeah, I'm hearing this, finding the way, and yeah, also a little bit this kind of standing in front of the world somehow, and the world could be the marketing aspect or other people, or it could be the family, or it could be, academy, and kind of holding your ground and discovering how to do it,
like, who am I to, I wasn't born into a lineage of storytellers. Who am I to call myself a storyteller? But at the end of the day, the world needs more stories. So, all those voices of doubt that we all get, and then the other ones that are like, no, just do it, and you're good, you're okay, and just keep going. And yeah, it's not crystal clear what the way is or what the goal is, but just keep going.
You keep going. You're on the path. And what are the gifts and the kind of treasures you are finding on the way, found so far?
When I was studying storytelling, our teacher talked about this magic when the storyteller and the story listeners and the story kind of become one. Like, let's say, as a phenomena rather than like a kind of a spiritual experience, although it could be this phenomena where we've opened the door, the stories open the door in our imaginations, and it's not about me or someone as the teller and the listener. It's like we're entered into this space and we're there together. And when I experienced that that togetherness through the imagination, and maybe slightly this sense of, there is this power, because I've kind of taken people in, and I'm the conductor. They're trusting me in this. That it's more like a feeling of awe than rather power, actually. And real, it feels really magical, and kind of humbling, and an honor to let this story out and create this space together. Especially as I really love to, ask the audience, ask the listeners questions, or get people to join in with instruments. Or I've started lately getting people to act out characters, which is just wonderful. And you've got adults that just immediately, like that, go into being playful children. That's definitely, I feel like that's a big drive for me, that I get to facilitate that, facilitating other people in their joy and magic and creativity. And that might be in telling a story, or it might be in leading a workshop and people connecting with their own stories or each other. When I have these moments in workshops where I just kind of see these pairs of people just engaged and listening, I really love that too. I did a deepening workshop with, like an enrichment workshop with Rory when he was here in Israel, and it was a workshop about the art of listening. It was very funny because we were about 70 people in the room, all Israeli, pretty much, I think. And the exercise was, there were several rounds, and it was, you imagine you're walking around with someone in a park or something, and you're both, at the beginning, you're both speaking over each other, and then it's dropping down a bit, so you're leaving a bit more space but still interrupting, and then it drops down until it ends up silent. But it was very difficult for people to just shut up. It was very difficult. It was very funny. It's definitely something in the culture here. But I think that's been a real treasure for me, and I still try to develop that. And it's something that perhaps the children of today, or my generation also, we're not so educated to listen. And it's said that a good storyteller needs to become a good story listener first, which is absolutely one of my gifts and treasures also. When I love hearing stories, so I'm like, yes, tell me.
Come back next week for the second part of the episode. If you like the podcast, like, share, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Support me in making the podcast on Ko-fi/Imaginaction. Subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcast, and Apple Podcast. And stay tuned for the next episode.